Our guest today is Girish Tanti, co-founder and vice chairman of Suzlon Energy, a company that survived crushing debt to reclaim dominance in India's wind sector. Controlling a third of the country's 53 gigawatt wind capacity, Suzlon now faces a different challenge, delivering on India's audacious 2030 renewable targets while the sector has exploited barely 4% of available land. With renewables set to triple by 2047 and AI data centers demanding unprecedented power, the stakes have never been higher. In this conversation, Tanti dissects the myths plaguing wind energy, explains whether offshore projects make sense for India, and reveals whether the nation's renewable infrastructure can truly support its AI ambitions. Listen on, it's Monday, the 12th of January. I'm Anirban Chowdhury. This is Corner Office Conversation.
Very warm welcome, Mr. Tanti, to Corner Office Conversation. Glad you could make time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So, we are talking about energy, renewables, which is such a global subject, which has such an influence on other businesses, which is part of so many government discourses and government-to-government discourses as well. Your family is, of course, synonymous with wind energy. How are you reimagining that legacy for today's renewable energy market?
So I think if we see the overall power situation today, as a country with the 6% plus GDP growth that we have, effectively, if you see between now and 2047, we will almost be tripling our power requirement. Right. And a good portion of this power requirement is, there are about three key factors in that. Number one is the new age industries, we're talking about AI, EVs, green hydrogen. All of this is going to contribute almost 30% of new power demand that's coming. The second leg is, of course, our middle class. Almost during the same period, the middle class is going to kind of be doubled from where we are between now and 2047. So that's another huge amount of higher energy consumption that we'll see. The third leg is around the manufacturing. Today, manufacturing contributes about 27% of the energy demand, which will grow to about 34%. So effectively, the energy demand from where we are today is going to skyrocket in a significant way. Within this, if we see renewables, then renewables will almost grow 10x. Within that, wind will be about 7x from where we are today. So the trajectory is pretty significant. And within that, I think wind has a very important role to play in this design going ahead from here. So today, if we see our first review period target is 2030. Within that, we're going to have about 100 gigawatts of wind, 300 gigawatts of solar, and about 100 gigawatts of all other renewable energy sources. So with that, India will have almost 50% of its total installed capacity coming in power sector, coming from renewable energy, with a goal of about 500 gigawatts by 2030.
Right. And would you tell me your Suzlon's contribution as well?
So we are typically about 1/3 of the market. Mm-hmm. Total installed capacity is about 16 gigawatts of the 53 gigawatts of wind which is installed. So every third installation is from Suzlon. Yeah.
Got it. Now, if you talk about the clean energy mix, it's being sort of reshaped by elements like solar and hybrid storage. What is Suzlon's long-term strategy in those segments?
If you look at the demand side of the customers, who is investing into renewable energy and what is the value add to them? So I think primarily one leg is the large power utilities. All our power producers are one group of clients. The other is the industrial clients like steel, mining, all of them, refineries and all. They have a heavy consumption. And the new age, we will have data centers for AI and other things, which again are heavy energy guzzlers. So all these energy companies or energy consumers, they need basically cost-efficient power, and that reliability factor has to come. Today, if somebody is starting up a new facility of any kind, they can go green from day one. It'll still be economically viable for them.
Right.
So I think from that point of view, typically we see that the market is shifting on a hybrid design where you have a combination of two sources, wind and solar. Typically, 25 to 33% of wind balance coming from solar and about 10 to 15% of storage. This combination gives us the least cost option today for generating electricity.
Got it. You spoke about price points, etc. Segueing to, power utilities, and they've been facing challenges for years. They've been in the news,
Yeah,
financially challenged.
correct.
That has told on payments also. Do you
Yes.
think that situation is improving or will improve? What needs to be
Yeah,
done?
so I think this is a very important area. I think that's the reason the way government has structured the current guarantee structure for the energy generation is that for entire sourcing of energy today is done at a national level. So government of India buys all the renewable energy power and then it supplies to the states. So effectively today anybody producing green energy under the new power purchase agreements from government of India, they are backed by government of India guarantee. So today the state utilities, even if their balance sheets are weak, they can procure from Indian government and it's government to government relationship and the private sector is not disturbed.
Got it. You spoke about the government. Can't help but ask you about policies, especially green energy policies, like, say, the hydrogen mission and the offshore wind push. What do you think of them? How sort of prudent, timely, and effective are they? Is there a gap between policy making and implementation that you see? And of course, what will Suzlon's role be? How will you chart its next phase of growth in these segments?
So I think after a very long time, India has got a very stable and clear energy transition policy in place. And within this, there are several components. So one is the electricity part of it, other is the fuels part of it. In the new era, we will see that the fuels also will become green. And green hydrogen is the path to get there. So there
Are
is
you
a
happy with the pace that we are progressing at?
Yeah, I think there is a good balance right now as far as green hydrogen is concerned. If you look at the total capex of a green hydrogen, then the actual hydrogen production capex is about 30-40%. Almost balanced 60% is actually the renewables capex. Effectively, what that means is that both wind and solar will have to play a significant role in our green transition journey also. On the second topic of offshore wind, so I think primarily two drivers for countries to go and install windmills. Offshore is basically putting windmills in the sea. So the countries which have primarily done this have two drivers. One driver has been that they are landlocked countries, and other is the winds in the sea have been significantly higher than on land. For India, the story is slightly different. Today, if you look at the total wind resource of our country, we can produce about 1.1 terawatt of energy. We've just done about 53 gigawatts. So just about little over 4% of the available land mass, which is today able to produce electricity, we have used. The second element is that the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean are calmer places and the wind speeds don't go significantly high from land to there. So typically world over, we have seen that the cost of putting up a project from land to sea, the ratio is about 2.5 to 3x costly. So unless you do not get generation also in excess of 2.5 to 3x, it doesn't make sense to go there. So I think for a country like ours, at this point in time, it's important for us to leverage the land resource before kind of getting into those kind of projects. But it'll happen. It's still a little journey away from you today.
Got it. And the last part of my question about Suzlon's own plans in these segments.
So if you look at green hydrogen, Suzlon will be a strong partner for all companies which are looking to get into green hydrogen to kind of make the transition. So we will team up with any green hydrogen company that's wanting to do that and be their renewable energy partner.
Are you already in talks with some?
So today, if you look at my customer base, industrial customers are there. The way they are planning today is that they are starting to build there because there is a time lag between the hydrogen production and the green part of the hydrogen, which is the energy side of it.
Correct.
Most of the companies today are building their electricity portfolio of green, whether they are consuming themselves or selling to the grid for now. As soon as they kick in their hydrogen manufacturing, then they can use these same facilities through the grid. So today I wouldn't know whether my customer would switch to
Understood.
that, but they are already building green assets not only to meet their electrification requirement but also for their green fuels requirement.
Understood. Let's come to global supply chains, especially the ones concerning turbines and rare earths have been fragile for a while. In fact, this would be a good opportunity because that discussion that flared up with China, etc., has sort of taken a backseat when it comes to news. So maybe this would be a good point for an industry veteran like you to tell us where it stands right now. And of course, how is Suzlon hedging against those risks?
Yeah, so I think for the wind sector, we are better positioned than some of the other sectors. Just to give you high level numbers, of the total wind installations which happened last year, almost 64% of the content that went into building a wind turbine is all made in India already. That number even grows higher to about 75 to 80% for Suzlon made turbines. So we are having even larger Indian content in our turbine. What this means also is that the dependency for imports is significantly lower in case of wind sector. And within those, there is very low use of rare earth materials in the windmills that we produce today. So effectively, windmills are in a way shielded both from geopolitical challenges, trade barrier or trade challenges, as well as any rare earth materials on that ground. And it's in a way good because your energy production really is an energy security also in the equipment that you produce. So the component in case of wind is significantly high. In solar, of course, we still depend significantly on the import content in case of solar. However, that ecosystem is also being built up very quickly in India. But today we have a good amount of almost 70% dependency on imports.
Got it. But aren't you dependent on Chinese supplies for critical turbine components as well?
It's a choice. We don't need to necessarily buy from them. There are other countries we can buy from. But most critical parts of the components of wind are all made in India today. Because if I have already reached a 75% local content, means there is very little that's still being imported. Now we have almost 2,500 MSMEs working across the ecosystem of various key components. From the early days where it was 100% imported to building to this level, it has taken a 30-year journey. But today I think we are very self-sufficient. For a matter that tomorrow if imports is kind of stopped completely, we can still make in India. There's no issue.
Got it. So you're significantly insulated from supply shocks and fluctuations from
That's
China.
correct.
That's
correct.
Okay. India, I mean, from what I understand, it's a little late to offshore wind, and global majors still sort of dominate as far as the technology is concerned. How can we become more competitive, and what is
So,
Suzlon's play?
Probably I need to clarify here that since 2001, that's when Suzlon built the first megawatt size wind turbine in the country. And later on by 2005-6, we started exporting it to the world. Since then, at least in wind, we can proudly say as any Indian that in this clean tech industry, we have a product technology which has an IP of India and for which we can compete the best of the companies in the world. And today, even for Suzlon, almost 5 gigawatts plus of wind turbines we have installed across 17 countries, largely in the northern hemisphere, all the developed countries in Europe, America, Australia, all these countries. And these are all very stringent environment to be able to sell a globally competitive $1 million plus product. So I think from a product point of view, we are pretty well prepared on that. Even for offshore, I mean, there was a time in the late 2000 when we also made an acquisition out of Europe. At that point in time, when we were running that company for several years, we were amongst the top as far as offshore technology is concerned. So I think from a product and capability wise, we are pretty equipped. When the time is right, any product that India needs, we should be self-sufficient in doing that. It's not even offshore.
You spoke about acquisitions. Are there any plans this year, next year?
You never say never, but at the same time, nothing that is on an immediate basis. But of course, as things progress, if there are opportunities, we made one acquisition a year back, which was in the service space. Today, if you see the total installations of India, about 53 gigawatts, of which about 16 plus is us. There is the balance portion, which are turbines supplied by some other OEMs. Good portion of them don't exist today also. But those windmills, somebody has to take care. So this is a service acquisition which is focused on non-Suzlon turbines.
Got it. You started your previous answer with a clarification. Can I ask you to, for our listeners, clarify two of the most persistent myths about wind energy that you've encountered?
I think I'll take two or three maybe. The first one is that there is probably a myth that we do not have enough wind in our country to generate electricity, or we do not have enough land with good wind conditions to generate electricity. As I was saying earlier, when we started our journey, the total wind potential of our country was about 300 gigawatts. Today, that potential has grown to 1.1 terawatt. It's not that wind has increased. It's because the technology improvement has been significant, where a place where you believed you cannot generate electricity 10 years back, today we can produce electricity.
Right.
If you say 100% of India's energy need and more can be met just by wind. So first of all, there is enough wind. We are blessed as a country. And again, it's not just the shore where you can put on the hills also.
Right.
So I think there is still 96% of land mass which is available, where today the wind potential is there. The reason you hear more about solar is because it's a B2C business and there is a consumer connect direct. You can see it in the urban environment and all that. You don't see windmills in the urban environment. From that point of view, I think what is important to know here is that as a country, the target which we have set for ourselves by 2030, both wind and solar are on track to get there. So I think the pace of growth with which they can happen. And again, this 500 number, there is a science behind why we have fixed it at 500. Government of India has taken the demand of the entire country, understood all the generating sources, and then done a waterfall in terms of least cost option to make sure that energy access as well as affordability to all is maintained. That is how that numbers have been decided as 500 of renewables. And I think wind is on track to deliver on its promise also.
So one counter question on your last bit, when you say, and you've sort of said this twice, we've only exploited 4% of the land that's available for wind. What percentage of the 96% can actually be exploited? I mean, there would be environmental concerns, etc. also. Right?
Yeah. So again, this is factoring all those. Yeah. So you have the total potential, you can do it. And see, when you are at 4%, you are at such a minuscule number. Even if there are limitations to say 10% of that, of 1.1, say we can do only 1 terawatt, still it's too big.
Yeah, but is there a reason why we've only exploited 4%?
I think it's a journey. These are very complex equipments. I mean, today if I was to say you the size of the windmill blades that we produce, it's almost equal or a little taller than Qutub Minar. You are kind of moving that in our infrastructure to take it to the locations and the villages and everything. So it's a tough journey. And if I was to put the wingspan of say an A380 total, the largest, then my wingspan of our total windmill which we produce today, the S144, is twice the diameter of A380. So that's the size of the turbine that we are talking.
That's a great
analogy. Massive mammoth equipment. And I think as countries' infrastructure improves, you will see the speed will improve. The beautiful part about wind is that most of the windmills, because by nature mankind has been closer to water, away from harsh climate like wind and other things. So these are scarcely populated areas where the winds are. And these are also the fag end of our economy. But the moment we get wind power there, we have seen those villages, and not just immediate villages, but neighboring 10, 15 kilometers. It becomes a very different economic development over there. So I think there is a bottom of the pyramid kind of economic growth which also wind energy provides because of their predominant nature of where they are installed.
Right. One question on your finances and the lessons you've learned. So, I mean, your company has emerged from a significantly long debt overhang, and there have been multiple restructurings as well. What mistakes in capital allocation or financial governance will you ensure are never repeated again?
Yeah, so I think the journey which we have had, of course, we put very strict governance framework, both financial, technical areas, which we have now in place. And you basically need to balance out your growth and the risks that you take along with it. And that's what you're seeing in the last 3 years also. At times, it can be seen that Suzlon is moving a little slower than rest of the country in that way. But we just make sure that whatever pace we go at, we do not fall in that pace at all, and make sure that it's a continuous growth cycle from here on. So we are a little tighter in terms of our decision making. We have also strengthened our governance as well as advisory councils that we have to make sure that those kind of guardrails are there in those decision making.
But are you sort of bothered by the so-called slow pace? I mean, some marquee projects in the past have faced delays or have underperformed perhaps.
I wouldn't say from that point, because if you see the pace at which Suzlon has grown, even if you just take last 3 years, has been fantastic. As you were saying in wind, how can we increase the pace of growth of wind sector itself? Two things that we're doing right now is, one is we are decoupling the project development and project execution. Typically what this means is that you need to do a lot of things before you can start the construction of the project. those activities now we are doing ahead of time. That's a 2-year journey before you can start the installations. I think customers are now open to look at a more long-term portfolio planning, which is allowing them to keep the project's development side of it ready so that once they have a power purchase agreement, they can get into construction quickly. This year, as an industry, we would do about little over 6 gigawatts annually. And the target is how do we bring this space to fire 10 gigawatts plus annually quickly in the next 2-3 years. The other component is on the pure execution. And I think earlier the market had fragmented contracting. Now it's again getting integrated, the model which Suzlon originally launched in India, where we have a better ability to manage the risks of the project in a much better way and deliver more value to customers. And I think today almost 35% of my order book is getting towards that direction. The idea is by 2030, we want to have almost 50% of our order book to come from EPC contracts, which will also further help us expand in the market.
Got it. I want to ask you a question about AI. Everybody is very excited about the potential of AI, but very few people talk about what a huge energy guzzler it is, especially given the huge investment that is going into data centers. As an energy veteran, how excited or concerned are you whether we have energy enough to become an AI power hub?
So I think since India has started the journey almost now 10-12 years ahead in the renewable energy transition, we are very well positioned. So I think today if somebody wants to set up a new data center from day one with 100% renewable energy, we can make it happen. So I think the infrastructure, the technology, the scale up, and also the willingness of the governments. I mean, we are hearing several state governments also making several announcements of their aspirations on this. I think as an industry, we are ready to serve that. From an energy point of view, they will be pulled back. I don't see that as a challenge.
Okay.
As long as they plan ahead of the curve. When they start thinking about the data centers, they need to also start thinking about the energy planning.
Of course.
And probably 2 years ahead, because these are all, as you said, large energy requirements that will be there. And just as I'm seeing for green hydrogen companies who are planning their green assets ahead of time, data centers similar will happen. And many of the industrial houses themselves are going into data centers.
Right.
They already have an integrated energy plan. They will allocate that energy into data center.
Okay, so how much of AI and say machine learning, IoT, basically tech, are you stitching into your operations?
Yeah, so, recently, as you know, we've just announced 3 smart factories. We've kind of integrated 4 key technologies in this. The first is the AI, the much spoken about the AI technologies, how we can leverage that into manufacturing. The second is automation. There is a huge amount of automation that you can get into a system. The third is robotics. And then there is the element of various new IoT devices of different nature, which you can plug in today with the tech that is getting developed. Further to this, we are expanding this beyond just the factories. So entire value chain, right from R&D to product development to manufacturing to project execution to logistics to service, we are using the same fundamental principles and drivers to almost reimagine our entire value chain. This journey has already started 15 months back. Now we are seeing some of the deliveries happening across my various business verticals.
Got it. Can you give us some details on the following? The investment that is going into these 4 smart factories and the cost efficiencies.
So effectively, if you see, I think on an average, we budget about 500 crores worth of annual capex, which we put into our production facilities to kind of enhance them, either the existing ones to kind of step them up with new tech or the new ones that we build. And this is largely met through our internal accruals. On an average, I would see from a net, from a throughput or cost saving this way, that way, whatever it is, overall performance improvement close to about 20 to 25% we would see. So it's a significant step up that you
with lesser manpower?
I wouldn't say lesser manpower, but you would see I'm able to kind of have a larger scale up effectively with even less skilled people. So it gives employment to a different element of resource also, which today finds it difficult to find a job. So there is a de-skilling element, and also we have significantly enhanced our diversity even in the factories now.
You mean women?
Women also, and also specially abled people. So we are able to get that into the system also. So effectively, this all kind of adds up that you are creating those rural employment with this kind of factories.
Exciting times. Thank you so much, Mr. Tanti, for joining us.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to be here.
Girish Tanti makes a compelling case. India's wind story is about execution, speed, and infrastructure readiness. With 96% of potential still locked away and smart factories barely scratching the surface, the real question is whether ambition will truly outpace capability. That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on Corner Office Conversation. It was produced by Vinay Joshi, sound designed by Amrit Reggie. Corner Office Conversation is a show where we talk to the most interesting business and thought leaders from India and the world, and it comes to you on your favorite listening platform on Mondays. Keep listening, stay tuned.